What's going on, party people? It's your boy, Yellow Boy, and this is Bros, Brews, and Botches. And this is Bro Talk. I'm here joined with my brothers as always. We have OHB over here, boy, and we have Hogs Wars. Today is a little bit different, a little bit more of a serious tone because of the things that we're going to be talking about here. If you've seen the thumbnail, we're going to be talking a little bit roundtable discussion about the Vince McMahon lawsuit and its allegations. Before we get started, I would like to put it out there that we will be talking about some topics that are, you know, possibly disturbing, graphic. So please, viewer discretion is advised. Also, we'll be telling our opinions. So this isn't anything that's been, talked about or factual. Well, some of the stuff that we'll be talking about factual because we'll be pulling it from articles that we've read, reports that we've read. But when we're giving our own opinions, it's clearly and pointedly our opinion. So please take it with a grain of salt. Um, but before I get started, let me check on the bros.
Oh yeah. We just
Yeah,
all
There, there he is.
we all just living our lives and being tired. So, we had a
Yeah,
very few chances to get together here lately and we wanted to talk about this. So this is something we decided to get on with.
life been lifing. Hogs Wars, how you doing today, man?
just like every other grown man playing Skull and Bones. No, but
Oh,
no,
okay.
it's just in trying to enjoy life the best way it can. Just like my boy said, tired because that's what men are. We always doing something, fixing something, trying to build something, trying to get something accomplished. So
And keywords in that is what men do. So some of the stuff we're going to talk about isn't what men do.
Mm-mm.
So
mm-mm.
I apologize because what I will be doing here, just for accuracy's sake, is I will be doing a bit of reading just to set the stage to get some of that information out. So if all of you will, I wouldn't say humor me for a moment, but if you will, just be patient with me while I read this because of the fact that it is serious what it is. So I will be reading a article from Bleacher Report that kind of gathers and aggregates all the information together from the original Wall Street Journal, Post, New York Times, and all of that. But the post reads former WWE staffer Janelle Grant filed a lawsuit Thursday in which she alleged that longtime WWE chairman and CEO Vince McMahon sexually abused her and sex trafficked her to others within the company. According to Khadijah Safdar of the Wall Street Journal, Grant signed a non disclosure agreement in 2022 under which she agreed to remain silent about her allegations and her relationship with McMahon in exchange for $3 million. Grant alleges in her lawsuit that payment stopped after an initial $1 million payment, so she is seeking to void the agreement and is suing for unspecified damages. Additionally, Grant alleges in the lawsuit that McMahon had her, quote, create personalized sexual content for a WWE superstar that he was trying to re sign, unquote, per Safdar. Quote, the suit didn't name the professional wrestler, but described him as both a UFC fighter and WWE talent. People familiar with the matter identified the wrestler as Brock Lesnar, one of WWE's biggest names, unquote. It goes on to say in the lawsuit, which names WWE, McMahon and former WWE head of talent relations John Laurinaitis as defendants. Grant alleges that McMahon pressured her into sexual situations and degraded her in exchange for giving her a job at WWE as administrator coordinator in WWE's legal department after meeting her in 2019. Grant states in the lawsuit that in June 2021, McMahon and another executive locked her in their office and took turns sexually assaulting her. She also alleged that days later, McMahon locked her in his private locker room and, quote, forced himself on her, unquote. McMahon allegedly sent explicit text messages to Grant and to other people within WWE about Grant, and Grant provided screenshots as part of the lawsuit. In one text, McMahon allegedly wrote to Grant, quote, I'm the only one who owns you and controls you. I want to, or controls who I want to F you, unquote. McMahon allegedly sent explicit photos of Grant to other people in WWE, and when others at WWE expressed interest in having sex with Grant after seeing photos on his phone, McMahon allegedly texted, quote, she may scream and try to say no, although it would be difficult to say anything with a blank down her throat, unquote. Grant alleged that McMahon told her on multiple occasions to go to Laurinaitis' hotel rooms and have sex with him before work days. Regarding Lesnar, Grant alleged that after he signed a new contract, McMahon allegedly texted Grant, quote, that part of the deal was effing you, unquote. McMahon allegedly gave Lesnar Grant's cell phone number, and Lesnar allegedly asked her to send a video of herself urinating. Lesnar, who is married to former WWE star Sable, allegedly told Grant he wanted to, quote, set up a play date, unquote, in December 2021, but a snowstorm canceled plans. Grant said in the lawsuit that McMahon pressured her to sign a non disclosure agreement in January 2022 when his wife, Linda McMahon, became aware of their relationship. In July 2022, McMahon retired from WWE after it was reported that he paid multiple women $14.6 million to remain silent about sexual encounters with him and allegations of sexual misconduct. A WWE board of directors investigation found that McMahon improperly failed to report the payments as business expenses, and he was required to repay the company for cost of the investigation. Grant alleges that WWE, oops, sorry, Grant alleged that WWE lost my place. Sorry, guys. It's a lot of information. Let me find it here. Sorry. She alleged that WWE tried to minimize her allegations of sexual assault by making the investigation more about the payments and how they were reported. McMahon reported returned to WWE in January 2023 and helped orchestrate a sale of the company to Endeavor Group Holdings, which also owns the UFC. WWE and UFC have since merged into a company called TKO. Now.
Maybe to back that up a little bit, you're having a little bit of
On
technical
Tuesday,
issue.
um, this would be January the 23rd, the 78-year-old was present at the New York Stock Exchange as part of the TKO contingent after it was announced that WWE had reached a reported 10-year $4 deal for Raw to air on Netflix beginning in 2025. None of McMahon, Laurinaitis, or Lesnar have commented on the Okay, I'm sorry. Getting my little technical issues going on here. Uh,
Hmm.
apologies. Where was I last at?
You were talking about Lesnar and McMahon hadn't talked about allegations or anything.
Okay, where was I last at? Sorry.
The Larry
Yeah,
hadn't spoke
Say
about allegations.
yeah, Laurinaitis.
that again.
You said McMahon, Lesnar, or
Don't know where I
Larry haven't.
popped it. Oh, okay. Of course. Gotcha. Sorry, sorry guys, my connection today is acting up and being crap. So
Hmm.
thank thank some of Xfinity for that. But it says none of McMahon. This is the last thing actually. None of McMahon, Laurinaitis, or Lesnar have commented on the allegations, but McMahon's lawyer Jerry McDevitt said in 2022 that McMahon had a consensual relationship with Grant, who hadn't yet been named at the time. So that was actually the last part of that article. But like I said, there's been some things that have been added since then, like McMahon stepping down and retire or stepping away from the company. Um, Laurinaitis's representative stating that he is a victim of this, and some other stuff that came out. So we'll talk about a little bit of this. Sorry about all the internet connection issues and such. Hopefully, I got all of that article read and you guys heard it. But enough of me. So I'll start with you, Hogs Wars. So hearing all of that, just kind of give me where your impressions of all of this is, what you think, that kind of deal, and we'll just kind of go round table with it from there.
Sorry about that, fella.
No, you're fine. Oh, Hogs, was you able to hear me?
Yeah, it just seems like it's a delay when I speak and hear you.
Anyway, yeah, he was asking you what your thoughts were on it.
Absolute,
Sorry about that.
absolute
Hogs, were
trash.
you able to hear me as far as being able to discuss what it is that you think about this whole ordeal?
I think it sucks. I think it's one of the worst things I've ever heard.
It's a delay.
Uh, and I know that for some reason, it just kept getting swept on the rug, and powerful men with tons of money get away with a lot. We've seen how people like Trump and others have, done these things and gotten away with bloody murder for a long time. But to realize how bad it was and that everyone just seemed to like sweep it under the rug is just kind of the most terrible part about it because people get away with things all the time, but it takes a team of people to keep it letting get going on, keep letting it get away, and keep letting things just keep festering. And it's just I, from a just a man standpoint, am thoroughly disgusted. Period. So
OHB, what you got?
I'm in the same vein as Hogs Wars on this one, man. It's just like some of the stuff that's come out during these suits and why it had to get to this point before there was some major change done to the effect of where they're kind of erasing McMahon from a lot of things WWE related. The same thing with Lesnar. Laurinaitis has kind of always been the fall guy for any of this. So he's kind of been the stepchild. Not to say, he's kind of looked at himself as a victim throughout all this. And I'm sure that, Vince McMahon being as powerful as he is, the money, the things he can do or cause in your life if you work for him probably didn't help matters a lot. Um, I'm sure because of that he's able to coerce people into doing stuff. But you got to also have a moral confliction with some of these things too, and say, you know what, man, like this ain't worth whatever you're paying me, like to cause somebody else this amount of stress in their life to the point to where Janelle Grant said, um, it's causing her a tremendous amount of PTSD, which two of us here are familiar, and one of the other ones, Hogs Wars, being a person, he understands what PTSD is as well. But me and Yellow Boy have actually went to school and learned a lot about that and how that doesn't affect just people that are in the military. It can be any substantial event in your life that causes you any tremendous amount of psychological pain, and some of the things that happened to her, I mean, you should never, even a prisoner of war that is like the worst human on earth should ever have to endure. And it's all down to the greed factor, man. It's like, oh, I can get away with what I want to because I can pay people money to not talk about it. And that's all good and well if you're willing to go along with it. But eventually you're not. Eventually you have that sit down with yourself and say, this is not cool. I need to get out there and stop this before it becomes a potential problem for other people. And who's to say there's not going to be more people that have that will come forward after this that have that haven't already. So yeah, all the way around, it's just an absolute garbage um, scenario. And I saw you elevated in the chat said, I just hope there isn't some statute of limitations that will prevent this from getting criminal charges. So, yeah, that's exactly what I'm on board with too. Yellow, how do you feel about it, man? I know you kind of read everybody the synopsis, but we want your take on it.
Man, this is number one. Um, Listening to DJ L Spade. If you haven't listened to his podcast regarding it, go listen to it. He talks about it a bit, but this is just kind of the nature of what goes on with powerful men, unfortunately, behind the scenes. They lose some form of their moral character at some point. It's not saying that it's okay at all. I'm just saying this is some of the things that possibly go on behind the curtain, if you will. Very deplorable, very disgusting. In the lawsuit, there's a 67-page lawsuit, I believe it is. We're not going to go through it here, but it lays out a lot of things that were going on that were alleged by Ms. Grant that Mr. McMahon was perpetrating. And it's just, this man has children, he has grandchildren, he has granddaughters. And for someone to take an employee who is reportedly who was down on her luck and was looking for work and just basically manipulate her into a situation like this and prey upon her, it's I mean, there's no words to describe it. It kind of fires me up because I'm just like, how could you do something like this? But it's not like it was unknown. Like the report said that he was sending pictures and stuff to employees. You had random employees that he was sending just pictures to, and because we know it was a $14.6 million uh, total of payouts, we know that this isn't the only time. I think a lot of this has to deal with the fact that out of the $3 million that Ms. Grant was supposed to receive, she only received 1 million of that. So, once you stop receiving that money and you have these NDAs that you're supposed to not be talking about it for, it's like, hey, where's my money at? I'm going to talk, and it's from what the sources say, this is only the tip of the iceberg for this whole situation. It does not look good for Vince McMahon at all. Like, this could very well be the end of McMahon. But I got to question the pros to you guys because of the fact of where we are in 2024. And, as far as who watches the WWE and stuff like that, is it, I'll ask you, and whoever wants to jump in can jump in, but to those who watch WWE, does this matter?
Mm.
It's a big question. I know I kind of gave y'all a loaded question, but it's
Man,
it's important to answer.
I'm gonna
Mm.
tell you, like, from a fan standpoint, a tenured fan standpoint, it does matter because
Mhm.
McMahon has been an on-air personality our entire lives in some fashion. Now he's kind of taken a back seat in the last 10 years or so, but he's still been around. But some of the things that he has done in vignettes and little background segments, and I even said in our group chat that art imitates life. There was one that Hogs Wars had shared with us, with a lady that had spilled coffee on him, and she since passed on. But it was just like, it was super cringe. He's like, what are you willing to do to make it right? And this and that. And I'm like, dude, like, these things coming out as we backpedal and start seeing these things, we're like, man, was that really that far off of how realistic things are? So yeah, to a degree, it does affect how I watch it. I think TKO did the right thing in being like, you know what, whatever y'all were doing before, to where he kind of went away and then came back. We're not doing that. Because we're a whole different company. We have an image, and we've invested significant money in two different organizations, and we don't want to have any kind of negative stigmatism around them. So them getting in there, knocking him out, and then all the other allegations that have come about, I think it's the right move. And from a wrestling fan standpoint, especially fans that aren't just getting into it, like people that are just now watching the product going forward, it may not affect them as much. But me knowing, man, maybe there was something to those cringy little back hallway and back room segments on TV that kind of wasn't too far off from real life. I don't know. What do you think about it, Hogs?
It really is about context. Um, if you're somebody that, especially as we say, smart to the business or anything like that, and you pay attention to all the things, and you've been watching since you were, knee high to a grasshopper, as some of them old people used to say. Vince was important in both how you saw WWE and how you saw wrestling to a certain extent, because once they bought WCW, that was it. There was no other form of wrestling that you knew, and it was all based on him. And it's almost like, and some people who probably like it, you know, maybe a little too much, probably see him as a father figure in some way, shape, or form. Heck, even some of the wrestlers who are still mad at him, even say to this day, they still kind of, they don't know how to feel, because he helped raise them in some way, some of them. So it's like seeing your dad and finding out he's a career criminal, and he's been killing people all your life. You just never knew it. It's gonna sting a lot. But in the same token, they literally are selling out pay-per-views. They're literally making more money hand over fist than they ever have. And people are caring way more about the storyline at this moment than what's going on with him, because once the story came out, it did the usual Twitter thing. He got canceled, and it's almost like people moved on to the next, thing they can be mad about. But if you see, some like the leaves through the trees on some of this, it matters a ton, because heck, Slim Jim literally backed out a day before the freaking Royal Rumble because of it. You know, People are being fired that was under him left and right now. And I mean, it's going higher and higher every week. So it matters. It's just, I don't think people really want to give it the credit it deserves, but like everything in time, just give it time. It's going to hit. How about you, Yellow?
So I think it does matter, but like you said, like kind of what both of y'all have already said, that if you are a long time WWE watcher, follower, then you know who Vince McMahon is. You know who Vince McMahon, the character, is, and we've seen the bios and stuff like that about him in the past and all of that stuff. And I think it matters a little bit more to those fans, those longtime viewers that kind of, you know, start to connect the dots, like what OHB was saying, seeing that that character imitates art and life, and how that's kind of starting to cringe as we start to see. Because there's no way, like to a certain extent, you can't pull off some of those cringy moments if there hasn't been something that you've seen in your life or done yourself that would kind of relate to that. Like when actors act, they pull from things from real life. Like for him to continually always go as him being one of the primary bookers and writers, or of the show, it's pulling from his mind. It's always said that his mind is the creative that's behind the WWE. So he's making all these bra and panty matches, all these, swimsuit matches, and, contests, and bringing in and pulling in all these women who are, just there for their bodies and stuff like that. And then you look at the backstage storylines where he's doing stuff with Ashley Mazzaro, who uh, OHB was talking about earlier. And even with that, I'll get to that in a second with Ashley Mazzaro. But there's also like if somebody watched the Chris Van Vliet, he had interviewed Stacy Keebler, and she was asked about a lot of that, and she felt very uncomfortable with a lot of the stuff that was being said on TV.
Hmm.
Sorry if my internet is still causing some delay. Sorry. interstate, interstate. The internet's doing what it does sometimes, and some of us who stream it happens. Sorry, it's trash today, y'all. But what I was saying was, if you go back and ask some of these divas wrestlers of the past and in the early aughts, like I'm sure a lot of them would say that they were put in compromised situations to where they felt like it was either uh, advance their career or be fired. Some of the things that they had to do. So it matters, but just like what Hogs Wars was saying, if you've only started watching wrestling within the past maybe 5 years, you've maybe not known that Vince McMahon played such a major role. You've seen him on TV, and
Hmm.
especially after the initial allegations were brought up just about the 14 million, and him out of just pure pride jumping back on TV and just kind of putting out there, well, I'm above the law, basically, like some of his friends, not going to mention names, but some of his friends, he's jumping on TV and I'm above the law and da 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 da. And soon after he had to resign, but then he comes back because he's basically putting the chokehold on the company that he made and said, you ain't gonna make no more money unless you let me back in where I'm at. And they did. And now there's more stuff coming out. Their HR was supposed to do a investigation, which obviously that didn't go
Hmm.
well. It didn't go the way they said it did, because if it did, like Janelle Grant said, that no one came and asked her any questions. When they did that investigation, no one went and asked her personal questions, and she was part of that initial lawsuit. So this is why this is coming out as well. Like, there's just a lot, y'all. But I did want to see if it mattered to those quote unquote casual fans and the marks or whatnot. So here's another question I have for you guys. What do y'all think the long-term ramifications of this is going to be upon WWE, and then also just pro wrestling in general? Do y'all think there will be ramifications, or is it just in the world of WWE? OHB, what you think?
And I think there will be long term. I think the industry as a whole is going to be more scrutinized for this because you have very similar other people of similar wealth and power in other places. But still, you have to have that mindset. McMahon's from an old school. Tony Khan is not so much. He's probably more interested in seeing who he can get from a fan standpoint to come in for him or anything entertainment related. But he's a man of power and a man of considerable wealth. I mean, by proxy. So I think the industry is going to be looked at. Any kind of combat sport industry is going to be looked at.
Hmm.
On top of it as well, I mean, there's been things against Dana White in the past, not necessarily to that degree, but it's always when you have somebody in those roles that have that kind of power, they're going to be able to get away with stuff that we're just not able to get away with. We might could do something one time, but we'd be rotting in a prison cell somewhere. It's all about your money. Going back to your human resource thing.
Hmm.
Your human resource works for who? It works for you. So
Hmm.
yeah, they've done their investigation, but like you said, nobody ever came to her to talk about it. So yeah, man, I think that the industry is going to be scrutinized for this kind of purpose to see if there's this kind of misconduct. And who's to say how many countless, especially female, stars in the past have had their careers kind of cut short because it's a very specialized industry. If you get blacklisted from the WWE for whatever reason they gave, and it's probably because you didn't go along with the status quo, you're probably not going to get work in any other major promotion. So that's another thing that maybe you'll start seeing to come out is some of the actual stars themselves. One of them has come out in a previous lawsuit. She wasn't really ever named. Will people know who she is? I'm not getting into that, but I'm just kind of interested to see where it's going to go in the future. But I think as overall, it's going to be they're going to look at it more closely, and there might even be some sort of ethics panel put across the board for sports in general, just to look at this kind of thing because this is really a first. I mean, you've heard about it here and there, but none of it has really had any major stage play or viewing as the one that the WWE has. Hogs Wars.
Definitely. And we've had, a couple people, during sports key to interviews and other ones where people have just flat out said the whole staff could be gone. They already went in the Titan Towers and cleaned out a whole lot of folks. The big deal is how far does it go? You brought the Rock in. Are you getting rid of Triple H? Are you getting rid of all these quote unquote stalwarts in the back, Michael P.S. Hayes, stuff like that, who've been through all of this night, in the 80s and 90s, some of it, because you've had, you got to remember, Vince had his own organization that he owned that he didn't even have partners in or go public in for so many years. And then after he went public, he tried to quote unquote change. They went from that attitude era to, John Cena, and all of a sudden, we taming things down because it's good for our sponsors, blah blah. But all the main allegations we just got were in the what 22. So they gonna go clean house, and it's gonna be tough. It's gonna be rough on quote unquote fans of the business, but it's really gonna hit all the business, not just if anything. They all stuff goes rolls downhill. It always does. They the big dog with quote unquote the biggest name, so it starts there. It's gonna just keep coming down. So there's no telling how far it's gonna go, especially now that you got people that y'all start messing with sponsorship and messing with money. That's when everything changes. Everything all of a sudden speeds up a lot faster. Things get done a lot quicker. People get moved out the situation a lot sooner. So I'm curious to see what happens after WrestleMania. I really am, because since that's usually fiscal quarter end of the whole thing with them, it's almost like time to clean slate, as the saying goes. I wonder how much cleaning is gonna happen. Yellow boy.
Bear with me if my internet does what it's been doing. So uh,
Been no selling you.
Really
it
has.
really, really has, man. That, that, and I've tried to keep it together, especially with the brevity of the situation of what we're talking about or whatnot. But this internet, it's not staying down. It's kicking out at 2.99. I've got the John Cena of internets right now. It's not trying to it's not trying to sell for me. So we'll see what happens. Um, but man, I think this thing again, it is similar to the Chris Benoit situation. It has put eyes on a situation that needed to
Mhm.
have eyes on it for a long time. Like Chris Benoit situation happened and CTE became a thing. They outlawed the chair shots. It's where the actually I feel like it's where the PG era began because after
Mm-hmm.
2007 there was they outlawed pile drivers and no headshots, no unprotected headshots and stuff like that, and they really took a real big look at CTE and also like really started looking into performance enhancing drugs, which a lot of wrestlers will tell you in the early aughts, late 90s, that that was something that was prevalent throughout wrestling wherever you went. They didn't look at it as anything bad. I'm not talking about just steroids. I'm just talking about the enhancement drugs and stuff like that. They were using those and painkillers. Those were something that was just normal, but they really put a crack to it um, after the Benoit stuff. So yes, I feel like this is something that's going to be looked at moving forward, and maybe like OHB said, there's going to be an ethics committee put together that will meet on a regular basis to look at the things that are going on in the business. I will say, this thing wasn't as big as it needed to be until like what Hogsworth said when Slim Jim started, when they pulled their
Mm-hmm.
sponsorship and that money started going, and now you have, like I said, TKO Holdings is now not just the WWE, but it's the UFC and WWE with
And
that
Endeavor.
both of those
Yeah.
companies. Yes, with Endeavor under Endeavor's umbrella. That's money. They're like,
Mm-hmm.
wait, we losing out on money. Vince, you're gonna have to get out of here.
Yep,
And like
he
they
done.
encouraged him to step away. They were like, dude, this is only one of many sponsorships that's gonna pull out. Hearing about this, giggity. But it's like, yo, you need to go. Like, we can't be losing this money. And like you said, Hogs Wars, this is the first time that Vince McMahon, since buying the WWE/ WWF from his father, that he had somebody over him. Like,
Mm-hmm.
he never had anybody in the driver's seat. He's always been that person. And now when money is being, left off the table, they're like, dude, nah, this is bad look on all of us. You got to go. So it wasn't a problem until it became a real big problem for multiple other people. And it's sad that it's got to be this way. And I think that's just kind of how big business works,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately. Until somebody changes that dynamic in big business, it's kind of how it works. It's not a problem until it becomes a big problem. But yeah, it's something that I do see going to affect as we move forward into the future with with everything. So what's going on in the background there? There's some stuff going on, man.
Going down. It's going down.
It's going down in the DMs back there.
Go in there.
Yeah. I didn't know what was happening. Um, but real quick, before we start in it, because there's a lot of things that's um out there and that's been said and stuff like that. But I would want to point attention because OHB brought it up to Ashley Mazzaro. Ashley was a professional wrestler with the WWE, and there is a clip that's making its rounds back out there that OHB was talking about, where it's very, very uh, cringy, if you will, because it shows some of that life imitating art, art imitating life, with in respects to Vince McMahon getting coffee spilled on him and stuff and how he reacted to it. Um, but Ashley Mazzaro had made a claim that while she was on one of the tribute to the troops tours, that she was raped by a serviceman. But the powers that be in the back kind of pushed it to the back, and Vince basically said that, we don't want our servicemen to have a bad light on them. I'm kind of paraphrasing or whatnot. And it's just kind of, again, cultivating that, environment of abuse and everything.
Right.
um, but yeah, it just and it's coming out that more people are talking about that now, that those allegations had some truth to them. And unfortunately, Ashley took her own life. I believe it was in 2022, and she's no longer able to stand for herself. And now she may be able to receive some form of justice. Unfortunately, it's based off the back of all of this other stuff coming out, which should have been addressed years ago. Um, so another question I have for you guys. So how often would you say or would you think that this type of stuff would be going on? And, you know, are there any other accounts that you can think of that this kind of thing might have been brought up with whether it be a wrestler or a staffer or something like that, that you also felt like was pushed up underneath the rug? Has there been ever another account that y'all can think of that kind of had the same kind of thing, like the Ashley Mazzaro situation? Or do y'all think that it's something that, not something that you think sporadically happens, but how often do you see that, in your own opinion, happening with the WWE and, for that matter, any other wrestling promotion?
I really think, whether right or wrong, remember when Trish Stratus had that one little thing with him and Linda McMahon and all them, and it just seemed like like when he made her dang near get butt naked in front of everybody, and it seemed like every time it turned around, she would look really weird every time she'd be around him on camera, no matter what it was. Try to be all, cool and sexy one minute, but she looked really freaked out the next minute. To this day, I still always thought something was really weird about that. And then you remember that, at this time, John Laurinaitis was quote unquote, divas this and divas that. We weren't looking for women who can wrestle. We looking for women who sex symbols and all this kind of stuff. There's a large part of me that really believes the reason that happened in the first place is because they were building this thing between him and John. They just had this thing. That's why when all of a sudden he came back and all these people left, but John came back, it really felt like he was like, "We're gonna keep doing what we're doing and not worry about what everybody else is." So all the other people that ain't you know on my know who I'm doing, what I'm doing. I'm gonna keep it in my little circle, so I have my people, and then go on. And since it was back in the day when he had no oversight, no one tell him any goddamn thing, HR or otherwise. Ain't no telling how much stuff happened during that era that we'll never know because no one ever got a chance to hear a thing about that. Just because he not only had the power, he had so much power, like he said, that no one would have found out. So that's the stuff that really hindsight 2020 makes you say, what if you will. OHB.
Man, I think a lot of that doesn't help that it came during the Vince Russo era, the Attitude Era, towards the end before he left the WCW, to where all that stuff was the edgy content they were looking for, so nobody questioned it. But going back with everything now, you start looking. I mean, look at like the divas from the Attitude Era versus the women professional wrestlers of today. Granted, their in ring gear and stuff like that could be misconstrued as skimpy, especially like Rhea Ripley's, but she leans into that. I don't think it's the same environment as it was then. And who's to say they didn't put such a showcase on that there to kind of be like, oh yeah, we know we're doing some shady stuff, but we're also featuring you guys a little more prominently than this industry has traditionally in the past.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you're right, man. I think there's going to be a lot more, especially you're going to hear some stuff from these Attitude Era divas and stuff coming out that's going to be on that. And especially if they were involved with anybody in that little bubble that Laurinaitis and McMahon, and who's to say if Pritchard and P.S. Hayes and all them weren't in on it too, because you can't work somewhere for that long and not know something. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the what ifs about what I think's gonna be coming down the forefront. But yeah, I mean, I know exactly what you're talking about with the Trish Stratus, and there were some moments where you can kind of visibly see on her face, oh, that's good acting. Was it Yella?
Darn freeze it, unfreeze, freeze, unfreeze. No.
brother, brother, my internet is out of a Coca-Cola can right now. That's where my internet is. Man, it's trash.
Sunshine.
Right, man. Look, man, this trash today. Am I still here? Am I good? Am I on?
Good.
Man, still frozen. But man, listen. They even asked Bruce Pritchard earlier. I think it was yesterday, if he could comment. He made a very, just bland. I cannot speak on the situation at this moment kind of response. So like OHB was saying, you can't be there that long and not know something's going on. And like you said,
Mm-hmm.
Hogs Wars, I am pretty sure that a lot of these stories that they were putting on camera were just based off of the stuff that they were
Mm-hmm.
doing behind the scenes. I just thought it would be interesting to ask to see what y'all thought about it, to see if y'all could think of any other situation. But that Trish Stratus, you definitely right. It did have some undertones of cringiness, like, okay, they're really going in hard with this, with him doing all this stuff and being super, super old man creepy with this woman. And yeah, it's a lot. Now we looked at it as young people and we had that cringe factor, but we also was thinking that it was just entertainment. And it's only as we get older that we start to see the signs that it's like, wait a minute. was this entertainment, or there's some realism to this.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's just, I'm glad that we're at a point now where we can value, and we as fans urge the value of women more than what they were in the late 90s and early 2000s, where we actually wanted to see real women's wrestling and not just, piece of storyline as a ballet or just eye candy on the side or whatnot. Like, and like OHB said, you have a Rhea Ripley who leans into it, but she's still taking that empowerment for herself. It's that self empowerment where she's like, I can be sexualized, but I determine when I'm going to be, that person. I'll lean into it. And she calls, her fans, I forget what she calls them or whatnot. And they say the lewdest things to her and she just leans into it. But, it's not to the level of what we were watching when we were watching wrestling in the early 2000s and late 90s and stuff like that. So
Yeah, it's a different a
it's
different
good to see.
air, a different air of uncomfortableness.
Yes,
It's just different.
it is. It really is. And I'm glad we've moved away from it, and, we're getting more wrestling. But I don't know. Is the answer to start firing everyone who has a relationship or had a relationship with Vince McMahon? Because that's the rumor mill that's out there, that they're going to start slowly but surely, especially because Amari Emmanuel, who's over all of Endeavor, is the one that's doing it. He's looking at the bottom line with money. Like, forget what you thinking about with your characters and stuff in wrestling. It's what's going to be best for my business. Like, and when you start taking out of my
Mm-hmm.
pocket, I've got to start doing some stuff. Like, forget what you may have a relationship and a hold to a character. Triple H may be your boy because he did X, Y, and Z in wrestling, but at the end of the day, that dude ain't gonna make me no money because he's still directly related to Vince McMahon and how he ran things. And if I need him to go, he gonna be out there. Care what you think, not, that kind of deal.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the answer? I don't know. I mean, like I said earlier, that kind of environment is cultivated based upon the folks who are in charge. And if Vince McMahon was the one that was leading the charge and letting that type of stuff happen and, sending it off to his employees were probably doing some of the same thing as well, saying that that was okay, that the boss was doing it, to some degree. I know it's different backstage now, but again, like I've said to people, the only thing that we know is what we see on screen and some of the things that kind of spill out to the media. We don't know none of these folks that we see on camera. We don't know who they are outside of the characters that they show us on screen. So before people start taking sides on, no, Vince McMahon didn't do anything wrong or whatever the case may be, he is a character on screen. Don't grow an attachment to someone that you don't know outside of, unless you have a working relationship with Vince McMahon, live with the guy, go eat with the guy and stuff like that. I need you not to kind of defend the type of behavior that's being alleged, because obviously there is some sort of truth for him to pay $14.6 million for people to be quiet on the matter. There is some truth to it, and it says a lot about you if you're defending that kind of behavior or disregarding it. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm off my soapbox. But is there anything else that y'all want to add to this before we get out of here and before my um, Coke can decides it wants to completely fall out?
I will say one thing that sums it up best, as Ted DiBiase used to say: everyone has a price.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes, they do. Yes, they do. Hogs voice.
I just know that, like you said before, it's not the first one, and he ain't gonna be the last one. And any man with this much goddamn money and this much power over his company has been getting away with crap for a long time. But as we've also found out through life, those folks always seem to mess up somewhere. And that one
Mhm.
chink in the armor seems to be the one thing that just start pushing that tipping over them. So don't be surprised if somebody else that you thought was so great and wonderful all of a sudden is just gonna show up on your TV the next week talking about some. We have allegations of such and such, because that's the reality of entertainment in general. Heck, how many stars do we know, and how many people in quote unquote Hollywood have we seen all of a sudden getting all of a sudden exposed out of nowhere. And they like, why are they getting exposed? Because everybody got camera phones now. Because everybody got this, that, and the third. You have evidence that you couldn't have 20 years ago. You couldn't screenshot somebody sending you anything. You couldn't do a lot of stuff. You got lucky if you saved an email. And even then, there was no email at one point. So until America Online. So you know what I'm saying? There wasn't stuff there to they should save people like it is now. So just be prepared. Don't get too caught up in nobody. Because as one dude says on the internet, anybody can get it.
Well, I'm interested to see, as long as my Coke can holds up. I'm interested to see what you guys who are watching this think about this whole situation. I know that
Mhm.
we can only do so much talking here, and there's so many points that's out there within the internet, with the news reports, within social media and such. Whether you're watching it live or whether you watch it on catch up, I want to hear what y'all think down below in those comments. Put what y'all think about it in the comments, or keep this conversation going. You can message us on Instagram. Keep the conversation going. The Bros, Brews, and Botches on Instagram. That you see all the stuff around us and whatnot. But yeah, it's very uncomfortable, very disturbing. But like all of us have said, this ain't the end of it. This definitely ain't the end of it. We definitely gonna be seeing some more as the months and years progress. What else is going to be coming to light? Will this mean the end of Vince McMahon? It seems like for his WWE career, yes. Is this the end of Brock Lesnar? Maybe. And whoever else comes out, is this the end of them? Who's to say? We just will keep you informed. We'll make sure we'll post all the information as it comes to be. But OHB, where can people find you at, man?
Man, you can find me on Twitch, Instagram, X, as Over Here Boy. Just exactly like you see it up there. Sometimes it's lowercase. I don't think that all matters. You just look it up, and if you see this redneck mug, you'll know you found the right one. Yo. How about you,
Hogs
Hogs
Wars, where
Wars?
can the people
Yo.
find
The usual, just go on Instagram. I'm really not posting as much as I was at first, but it'll start picking up again because it's Instagram. You always find something on there, so you might see more stories than you're gonna see me actually just post stuff on my page. But it's there.
and
Yellow.
you can if you can find the algorithm, and if my Coke can holds up, you can find me on Twitter/X at Badass Yellow Boy. That's BADAZZ_YELLABOI. And then you can always find me at your mom's house because it's Sunday, getting some good old Sunday dinner. So tell her to make sure she has that plate to the side because I'm coming through. Anyway, I just probably not the best joke for the situation, but I just um I'm trying to keep with the character. But anywho, guys, thank y'all for holding on. Thank y'all for holding with me with this messed up internet connection. We're gonna try to do more of these as situations pop up, as talking points pop up. Continue to look to your notifications. As promised last week, I will try to post a Black History Month spotlight for you for the next couple of weeks here in February. So keep your notifications. They're only going to be a few minutes long, so you won't have to worry about just being overrun with information. But anyway, I'll quit talking so that I don't completely drop out. But this has been Bro Talk, you guys. I've been Yellow Boy, as always, joined by OHB Over Here Boy and Hogs Wars. And until next time, you guys, y'all stay safe. We love you. And as always, until next time.